We live? All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this month's audio production town hall. We're glad you could join us. Each month, you'll find us here talking about all sorts of different topics related to audio production, from making records, sound for film, games, and beyond. Um, we, uh, we're here today with Jason Strawley, the assistant manager for the film dubbing stage. My name is Bryan Hall. I am the course director for critical listening. You'll see me in my class towards the end of the first year. So glad you all could join us, and let's dive right into it. So your title is the assistant manager of the dubbing stage. What are the different roles that might be found? What are the different titles, the positions that you might find with the dubbing stage crew?
So our dub stage is a little different since we're academic. We just have a manager, that's Dave Camella, and an assistant manager, that's me. So it's just the two of us, and we have to kind of wear all the different hats that would be worn in like a Hollywood dub stage. In addition to that, we teach classes and labs and have special events and do tour groups and stuff like that.
Cool.
But in a Hollywood dub stage, there's a few different roles. The main role is the re-recording mixer, and that's the person actually operating the console. They are the ones actually mixing the soundtrack for the film. There could be, depending on the budget and scope of the project, there could be 1, 2, or even 3 re-recording mixers. So in what we call those operators. So in a one-op setup, there would be 1 re-recording mixer, and they mix the entire soundtrack. This is more common for like lower budget TV and kind of more associated with New York as opposed to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Then we have the 2-op setup, which is what you're going to find on like bigger budget narrative TV and the majority of feature films. So in a 2-op setup, there's 2 mixers operating 2 consoles, 2 computers with Pro Tools. One of those mixers is doing sound effects, and the other is doing dialogue and music.
Okay.
And in a 3-op setup, which you only see on like the biggest productions, like blockbuster, multi-$100 million movies, there would be dedicated mixers for dialogue, sound effects, and music individually.
Understood.
The room also typically has a mix technician or a mix assistant. They are there to basically be the Pro Tools ninjas. They're there to make sure that all the routing is correct, that the mix template is set up the way the mixers want in terms of track layout and organization, color coding, stuff like that. They are also typically operating the record machine, because we're mixing on 2 or 3 different computers, and then we're dumping all that off onto a dedicated recorder.
Yeah.
So the mix tech is operating that. And they're just generally there to anything that the mixer needs, that the re-recording mixer needs, that mix tech is there to just kind of be their runner, communicator, coffee grabber, anything to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
And then finally, there will also be like the dub stage engineering staff. They're usually in the projection room. They're not actually in the mix room.
Okay.
And they are basically maintaining all of the computers, interfaces, all the IT that goes along with it. There's a lot of security stuff that goes into it in terms of like, if you're working for a big Hollywood studio, all that material is behind passwords and stuff like that. So that's kind of the engineer's role, is that kind of behind the wall, kind of doing the more technical and computer-based stuff.
That's cool. So what I like about what you said there is that as Full Sail students, sometimes it's difficult to know, like some people, they know what they want to do as soon as they come here, they have a set path that they want to get to. But for those that are not quite sure what they want to end up doing, there are so many opportunities, even within an isolated world like the film dubbing stage. There are so many different ways that you can specialize. You can find your way into a niche that fits your, temperament, personality, and skill set perfectly. So that's awesome. Before we get into, we talked about the positions. Before we get into the facility itself, if you wouldn't mind going over your background. It might surprise the viewers to know that you actually did the audio production degree program. And what I like about that is that he didn't necessarily need to. This was just a matter of like keeping your credentials sharp and, relearning some things perhaps, or just, learning about the latest latest techniques. But you've had quite a bit of experience before that regarding this, correct?
Right. Yeah, I initially graduated from Full Sail with a recording arts degree.
Okay.
And at that time, it was only an associate's. There was no option to get a bachelor's or a master's or anything else. So after school, I actually came here to learn about post-production because I was already kind of involved with music, and I specifically wanted to learn post-production for film. And at that time, we actually didn't get too much of it. So I got all the way through, and even though I sharpened my skills on the music side, I didn't really pick up too much in terms of post-production. So fast forward until after graduation, I did AV here in Orlando for a few years, and realized that's not what I went to school for. I went to school to do film audio. Yeah. So I made up my mind that I was just going to make it happen. So it's my background in audio post. It's completely freelance. Like, I've never actually worked for a post-production studio ever. I've never been an employee of somebody else when I do this work. So basically, I had a friend who was a filmmaker, and they were producing their second extremely low-budget feature film, and I just kind of pitched the idea, like, hey, I do sound, the thing I was doing primarily at that point was recording death metal bands. But I was like, well, it's all audio. How hard could it be? So let me throw my hat in the ring, and they wanted it done cheap, and I was willing to do it for cheap because it was my first ever, crack at it.
Sometimes that's what it takes, right?
Yeah. So I did it, and it was a disaster. There's this thing in filmmaking called quality control, where before a distributor will buy the movie from the filmmaker, they need to ensure that it's technically accurate and proficient. And long story short, I completely crashed and burned on that because music doesn't really have that process. Right. I was not prepared for that. I was like, well, it sounds good. What else? It doesn't matter. But I had stupid mistakes. Like, I had the return of the dialogue reverb is like playing in my sound effects stem. And there was like Foley that wasn't in sync perfectly, to frame accurate. There were a few sounds missing here and there, and that's just not something you really encounter in the music world. So I crashed and burned. Fortunately, the filmmakers had a little bit of time. It took me about a month to fix the movie. During that month, I did not get paid 1 penny because it was all my fault.
Right. Yeah.
So rightfully so. And ultimately, we fixed all the problems and got the movie shipped, and it made a little bit of money. And they didn't fire me.
That's important.
I think I've done 6 feature films for the same production company now.
Yeah.
So it's worked out. I think they were looking for somebody who was maybe willing to learn at the same time they were learning, but would also own up to mistakes and make sure they were made right.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a really important thing. If you're going to mess up, especially early on, at least, own up to it and fix it. And then it just kind of went from there. Once you have one feature credit under your belt, it's a little bit easier to convince people to hire you for the next one and the next one, and it kind of builds from there. So
that's awesome.
Primarily low budget, independent, lots of horror movies, lots of kids movies. That's when you're in the low budget independent world, that's the majority of what is getting made.
Quite the contrast, actually. One of the most valuable things I think you said was very early on in that answer. Sometimes, when you graduate, you don't have the benefit of waiting for months and months to find a job if one's not coming to you. You went ahead and got the AV position. What I love about your story is that at a certain point, you're like, this isn't what I came here for, And I think there are quite a few people that end up working right out of school, and then they end up in a niche or genre of career that maybe they weren't hoping for, and then they end up stuck there. They pigeonhole themselves. But that doesn't mean that you need to. If you want to, let's say you start working in a studio, you realize that you actually want to do field recording or you want to work in the dub stage, there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You just need to make sure that, you are aware enough to make that change if you can. So
yeah, and just be willing to be uncomfortable. When I did that AV work, which is plentiful in Orlando, within a couple of years, I'd been promoted like 5 times, and I was making really, really good money, just not doing what I wanted to do. So it was kind of painful to rip that off and be like, no, I'm working 90 hours a week. There's no time to do what I'm passionate about anymore. I've got to cut this off.
Yeah.
So, I just be, if you have a dream, it's going to require some level of discomfort to achieve it. But yeah, never lose sight of it, though.
That's important. Absolutely. So now, as far as the facility itself, for someone who's never experienced or never been inside a dub stage before, how would you describe what happens there? How is the dub stage on campus similar to one you might find in Hollywood, or how are they different? I've been in the one at Full Sail, and it is mind-blowing. So I imagine there aren't too many differences regarding that, but just, I guess, go through and describe what the facility might look like.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a picture here, too, if you guys are seeing the keynote graphic here. Yeah, but the Full Sail film dubbing stage, as we call it formally, or just the dub stage informally, it's pretty typical of a Hollywood mix environment. This would be probably considered a mid-sized room in LA. I've been in smaller, I've been in a lot bigger. We have about a 50-person seating capacity. There are dub stages in LA that can go upwards of 300 people.
Wow.
So there's a pretty big difference. In terms of the speakers, we're a theatrical 7.1. Which is what you're going to find in most commercial movie theaters. Now, that's one big difference. Hollywood dub stages almost universally have gone to Dolby Atmos.
Gotcha.
We haven't made that transition yet. It's a very expensive transition and a time-consuming one that's currently in development. So that's probably the biggest difference, is while we use the same model of speakers, we just don't have that Atmos mixing capability. The console is an Avid S6. It's an 80-channel board, so we mix as a 2-op. I typically mix the sound effects, and the other guy that works with me, Dave, mixes the dialogue and music. We each get 40 channels to work with. That's a little bit bigger than the standard. Most Hollywood S6s have 32 channels per side, so we're actually like a little bit bigger than what you typically would find in a Hollywood room. So we also, you can kind of see in the photo there, we have, of course, the mains, which are the theatrical 7.1, which are behind the projection screen, but we also have near-field speakers, these Genelec near-fields. We can do a down mix to 5.1 and kind of reference what it might sound like in a home theater. We have the cream-colored Avantones, which is a stereo, and so we can send a stereo down mix into those and kind of get an approximation of what it's going to sound like on maybe a cheap sound bar. So that's really important, is, even though we all want to see the movie at the movie theater at maximum volume and maximum quality, the fact is the majority of films are consumed on AirPods or laptop speakers or TV speakers.
Or phone speakers.
Or even phone, God forbid. But,
exactly.
So we have to actually check it for all those environments and make tweaks to the mix depending.
Cool.
Let's see, we have, of course, it's projection, because it is a movie theater, essentially. So the room is about 60 feet deep. The screen is about 32 feet wide. So it's a nice big screen. It's really great for like directors and producers and kind of above the line film people. They get to see the movie in a theater just like their customers will. So it's a big confidence boost. They really, for the first time when they get to the dub stage, know how it's going to translate, not only acoustically, but visually.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have 3 different Pro Tools computers. They're all synced together with time code. 2 are for mixing, and 1 is a recorder. And those are all hooked up with Avid Matrix 2 interfaces, which are the current state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line Avid interface. And it's a completely Dante signal flow. So everything from back of house all the way to the speaker to the amplifiers is basically Dante.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the main reasons why we're talking today is actually to talk about the dub stage internship. Right. And wanted to kind of dive into that quite deeply, because I know that there's going to be quite a few students that would be interested in an opportunity like that. I guess the first thing we should mention is the fact that this is not an internship that can be done online. This is something that you have to be on location. Who is this internship geared towards? I mean, this is open to anybody who's a graduate of Full Sail and wants to. You might live in California, you might live in Oregon or whatever. if you qualify and you get hired, you can come down here and,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and of course,
an intern.
you know, we're talking to an online student audience, you know, so I totally get it. But, you know, maybe if you're somebody who is local to Florida and you're okay with tolerating 6 weeks of a rough commute, you know, we've had interns come from, you know, as far away as like a couple hours away to do the internship. So if you can tolerate that commute for a short term, that's great. Another alternative when we've had audio production students do the internship is just staying somewhere locally for 6 weeks,
Gotcha.
doing an Airbnb, you know, a hotel, you know, extended stay, whatever the case may be. You know, of course, that requires some budget, you know, or maybe you have a friend here and you can crash for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, so that, but the in-person aspect is really important because this 80 channel S6 that you're going to be mixing your short film on, we can't ship that to your house.
No.
That's not part of Launchbox, unfortunately, or your degree would cost about $500,000. So
Yeah.
So let's not do that. But yeah, but that's why it's so important that it's in person, because we're trying to get the interns reps with their hands on a professional control surface, because it really changes the way you mix. It's much more efficient, it's much faster, you can get a lot more done, and it is 100% the industry standard. There is no mouse mixing in film.
Yeah.
So it's really important. Now, we only mix for like the last week of the internship, but the rest of the internship, like for example, we do Foley recording.
Yeah.
And we have a Foley pit here with a control room connected to it. And, you know, once again, it's very difficult to record Foley at home.
Yeah.
You know, even if you have the stuff that comes in your Launchbox, you know, your air conditioner's on, the dog's barking, the kids are running around and screaming. There's airplanes flying, like, and Foley tends to be very, very quiet sounds. It could be cloth movements, very subtle cloth movements, and any background noise is going to be a killer. So Foley recording is an important component. And just kind of like it's a very hands-on mentorship style.
Right.
You know, our interns sit and do the work for the most part, but if I see that they're not going down the right path, I'll shove them aside gently, and jump in and show them exactly how to do it, including like hotkeys and just kind of, you know, workflow tips that don't necessarily come across on a computer screen. So
I think that's important to emphasize, is the fact that as an intern, you'll be getting your hands on the gear, and oftentimes, you know, making decisions that are, of course, supervised, but you have a certain amount of control over the product, which is a pretty important part of the process. I think if everything is just shown to you, and this is a big part of the ethos of Full Sail, you know, getting your hands-on, you know, hands-on projects and that sort of stuff. So it's important that the internship is done the same way. Can you walk me through what a week as an intern might look like? And like, how does their Monday look compared to their Friday? Is there something that you work towards over the course of the week, or how does that look?
yeah, so usually it's a 6-week internship, and conveniently we kind of work in 6 different areas.
Okay.
You know, so let's take week 1, for example. We do the dialogue edit in week 1. We have to do the dialogue edit first because it's foundational to everything else. It's really the only part of the soundtrack that we measure in any way in terms of levels. And we do that during the editorial process, and then all other volume decisions flow downstream from that.
Gotcha.
So we have to start with dialogue. And it takes, you know, a 10-minute short student film. It will take a professional dialogue editor 1 day to do that. But a student or intern level dialogue editor, it's going to take them the entire week to get through that. You know, so day 1, we are teaching the workflow, you know, how we have very particular Pro Tools templates. We have very particular organizational methods. And I'll get into why organization is important a little bit later.
Yeah.
And so day 1 is just kind of learning, how do we want it done? How do we want their Pro Tools session to look? And then from there, it progresses to actually cleaning up the audio. Then we spend a couple of days learning Isotope RX and all the noise reduction techniques in that. And then like by Friday, we expect them to be mostly done. And maybe that's the point where I'll go in and listen to it and just drop a bunch of markers, fix this, do that. And then so that at the end of the week, they're basically just doing fixes, which we could kind of view as like almost client notes that need to get knocked out. And then the next week, we jump into backgrounds or sound effects or Foley or whatever it may be, and that process kind of repeats itself.
Gotcha. Is there any ADR that they get into?
I would say situationally.
Gotcha.
Typically, the student films don't do ADR because the actors are unpaid, and it's like impossible to get them to come back
that makes
into the
sense.
studio.
Uh-huh.
We do record voiceover.
Okay.
For example, if the student filmmakers had voiceover, they can come in and we do that. But that's a little bit different because it's not sync to picture.
Yeah.
But it's still an important component. Now, the exception to this would be, though, if, let's say we happen to have a professional project, a couple, 3 times a year, we might get an independent feature film. And the interns that just happen to be there when that happens, it's a really fortunate experience for them because now instead of a student film, they're getting a credit on a professional film. And we definitely do ADR for those.
Yeah.
So yes, there could be an ADR component to an internship, but it would have to kind of coincide with one of those professional projects, which are totally unpredictable and out of our control.
Even if it's not a professional project, like how does the internship at Full Sail, at the dub stage in particular, how does it differ from just working on a series of student projects that they might encounter in class?
Yeah, so the student projects are great. You've got to start somewhere. Now, there's a couple of things, though. Number one, just remember that like every single student that's graduating from your degree has the exact same class projects in their demo reel. I work primarily on campus with our recording arts students, and they do the video game Ori. So I've seen 500 demo reels with Ori in it.
Yeah.
And even the really good ones sound all exactly the same.
Right.
Or, we've been doing the same student film called Dresden for like 15 years now. Yeah. And it's like, I bet it's a meme even in the industry. Like, oh, here's another Full Sail kid with Dresden in their demo reel.
Yeah.
So having a credit under your belt, even if it's a student film that you had full ownership of and nobody else has touched, I think is a very unique thing.
Yeah.
So you can point to that and be like, I completely controlled the soundtrack of this. And it's unique to me. Nobody else will ever work on this film. I worked under a deadline, and I worked with a client, because that is one thing we do is the student directors of these films work directly with the interns to make sure they're getting what they want, creatively and technically. So whereas like in a class project, your instructor is going to kind of be your client in a way that they're going to give you feedback. You're going to have to fix it and revise it and re-deliver. It's a little bit different when that client has creative control in the way that a director does.
And in a lot of ways, Full Sail itself has made huge strides to that end. While there might be quite a few portfolios that look similar, the fact that students are graduating with a portfolio in the first place is actually pretty mind-blowing. But any experience that you can get while working at Full Sail or while going to school at Full Sail before you graduate is going to be incredibly valuable outside of the scope of class. It can be difficult to do, but something that you should strive for. And then being able to graduate and jump right into something like this internship would be pretty amazing. I mean, like, if someone was interested in this opportunity and they were graduating in 6 months, what are some things that they could start to do now to kind of strengthen their qualifications, their hope of getting in?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put up on the screen here just some of the things that the interns do, just to give you guys an idea. But like if you were 6 months out from graduation and you wanted to be able to do all of this stuff, the first and most important thing is, I think, just like volunteer, jump into any project you have the opportunity to jump into, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's like a book on tape or a YouTube instructional thing or like a corporate thing or whatever is, just volunteer for stuff over those next few months, just to continue getting those reps. That's probably the biggest thing. Next, I would say work on Pro Tools. You know, for better or for worse, it is the only DAW we use in the film industry. You will never see a film mixed in Logic or Reaper.
Nuendo.
Or I mean, Nuendo, you know, in Europe and Japan, you see it, but not really in the States. So it's Pro Tools or bust. So that would be another thing, is just make sure you're sharp on that. Make sure you're fast on that, hotkeys. Get comfortable with the I/O. Get comfortable with session routing. And then other than learning Pro Tools and getting sharp with that, yeah, I would say those are the two. Volunteer as much as you can, get sharp with Pro Tools, and then finally, reach out. I'm going to put up a slide with my email address at the end. If you are even thinking of doing the internship, reach out as early as you can, and then stay in touch. And bug me every 2 weeks. You know, what should I be working on? What can I do? Can I send you something? Can I send you an example of my work? You know, all of that stuff I think is really important. You know, of course, if we're going to work with an intern for 6 weeks, we'd like to have gotten to know them at least just a little bit.
Correct,
in the months leading up to that.
I'm a huge fan of this idea that if you do something that other people are not, there's some sort of benefit in it for you, you know? So for every person that's watching this live or watching the recording of this, there are a lot of people that just never made the time to do so. So the fact that if you're watching this town hall, you're going to be able to get Jason's contact information, be able to reach out. If you never attended this, you never watched this, then you would never have that information, and that opportunity would just be closed to you. So you never know when your door is going to open up. You just have to try to make yourself as available as possible, you know, and try to, like you said, volunteer for as many things as possible, and try to network as best you can, which can be hard as an online student, but not impossible. We've had a few people definitely demonstrate that that's not impossible. So,
yeah, if you happen to live in a filmmaking hub, or even just an entertainment industry hub, if you're in Atlanta, Nashville, Austin, LA, New York, Chicago, you know, if you happen to be in those places, there is like in-person networking stuff you can do locally. You know, just you know, a couple of quick things, like for film, there's a few organizations you can join. I'm in Cinema Audio Society, CAS. That's like a kind of, it's not a union, but it's like a trade guild for film mixers. They do events kind of around the country, and you can get a student membership to that. So maybe research that if you're looking for network opportunities. If you're more of an editor, there's MPSE, which is Motion Picture Sound Editors. They also have a student membership. They also do events around the country. And then AES, the Audio Engineering Society, they also do events, workshops, stuff like that. You know, or just one example, like if you're in Atlanta, every year there's an event in Atlanta in November called the Mixer. It's all the mixers in town that do production and post, and they get together and have like a big barbecue, but there's also workshops and gear demos and stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of times, even if you're not here on campus, or even if you're not in Hollywood, there's still those opportunities to jump in, and because networking, unfortunately, you know, for better or probably for worse, is kind of the linchpin of this whole industry. Yeah.
And it's so important, not just in this industry, but any industry you can find yourself in. So even if you don't live in, you know, a hub for film and television, there are opportunities for groups that you could join, like Jason was saying, that aren't necessarily in person, but could find yourself, you know, connected or at least exposed to the right people at the right time. So I guess as far as the internship goes, what are some of the less glamorous things that are involved in being an intern? You know, things like when I was an intern, I made a lot of coffee, became quite the expert, if I had to, don't mean to brag, but so things like making copies and you know, running these sorts of things. So what could be not necessarily part of the job description, but is definitely a part of the job description?
Yeah, well, I wish the coffee still was. I
I don't
promise
think that's
you,
allowed.
I got promoted twice in the AV industry because of
Your willingness.
making coffee. Getting really good with the French press.
Yeah.
We used to make our interns make us either pour over or French press coffee every day. Full Sail said no, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So you're lucky we don't have to deal with that. Less glamorous stuff though, like we have to keep the room immaculate. The dub stage, we're the forward-facing kind of tour destination. For every single tour that touches our campus, there are dozens at any given day, we're the first destination on it. So that means keeping the console sparkling.
Yeah.
That's an opportunity to learn the layout of the console though while you're wiping the knobs off. Read what the knob says, and you can get to know it.
Never a wasted opportunity, right?
Yeah. So that's a big part of it, is just keeping the console clean. Also in our Foley room, where the Foley prop storage is, it can get out of hand real fast.
Yeah.
Like most Foley studios are a complete mess. So that would be, something you'd have to do is kind of you clean up the Foley props, make sure everything's organized in the correct labeled bins and stuff like that. Let's see, other unglamorous stuff. We're in at 8:30 every morning. So if you're not a morning person, that's great, but you might have to become one for 6 weeks at least. So, and then it's a full work day, and you have to kind of police your own hours. We'll say by the end of the day, we need you to have finished this much. And it's up to you how you get there.
Yeah.
If you can take an hour and a half lunch and still get it done, so be it. But if you're the kind of person who has bad time management skills, maybe that would be considered an unglamorous part, is having to kind of keep up with, with your own stuff like that.
I want to get back to the schedule thing in a moment, but we've got a question in the chat.
Oh, cool.
Student says, I love this opportunity as far as hours. What is the commitment? We've got a slide up that says it's 40 hours a week, 240 hours total, but is it compensated or paid?
It is not paid. It's a purely academic internship.
Which is pretty standard.
Yeah, for something like a university, that seems to be the norm. Do I wish we could get interns paid? Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Work study is kind of an option, federal work study, but you have to be currently enrolled. So for our interns, they can't even work study because they have to have graduated.
Yeah, okay.
So that makes it even trickier. But yeah, 240 total hours, 6 weeks, 40 hours a week. Like it says here, it's Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. So it is a full-time job, fully immersed in working in a post facility.
So the schedule is 8:30 to 5. What are the typical hours that someone working in a dub stage might have to work? Because I know it varies wildly in the musical engineering, working in a studio. How about this particular career path?
Yeah, also working in a dub stage is not a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
We're that's kind of what we're restricted to in our environment, but dub stages are notorious for going into overtime. I've personally mixed for 23 consecutive hours without getting out of the chair.
Oh, wow.
So it can happen. There's, usually though, if you're on a big Hollywood project, you're in the union and you're getting overtime and double time and golden time. So when movies get into the crunch time, that's when re-recording mixers buy yachts.
Yeah.
So you get compensated for it. Now, in independent film, that compensation just isn't there, unfortunately, and the hours can still be, very, very long. It depends on the personalities you're working with. Some directors will be like, at 5 o'clock, we're out of here. I don't care what else happens.
Yeah.
And other directors will make you work until 3 a.m. and just grind you down. So,
right.
It's unpredictable, and definitely expect overtime.
23 hours straight is wild. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Every month we have a conversation about the flattest frequency response that we can work at between 85 dB and 90 dB for our frequency response curves. And at 85 dB, you can be exposed to that for 16 hours before suffering permanent hearing damage. At 90 dB, you can only be exposed to that for 8 hours. And there's always a conversation regarding, well, how often are you ever going to be working 16 hours in a row? How often are you ever going to be working 8 hours in a row? And the thing is, sometimes you could absolutely be working more than 8 hours in a row. And in your case, 23 hours beats 16 by a significant margin. So it is important to pay attention to the monitoring levels that you're working at. Try to stay between 85 and 90 dB, but if you know you're in it for the long haul, I think it's probably worth bringing it down a little bit, only bringing it up for small amounts of time.
Yeah, some Hollywood rooms have something called the stoplight system, where they put a measurement mic at the mix position, and it's getting just an ambient reading of sound exposure, and and then you'll just have a green light, which is like, okay, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yellow light is kind of like, okay, we're getting close to our exposure limits. Maybe we should think about calling it a day. And red is like, okay, we've gone over our safe exposure. What are we going to do here? Now, I've not worked in one of these rooms. I've just seen somebody demonstrate it.
Yeah.
I would imagine in actual reality, some directors would still blow through the red light, but maybe the mixers would have, grounds to, ask for double time or extra compensation of some kind for fighting through it. But I don't know that for sure. That's just kind of my guess, because so it just depends on the filmmaker once again.
I mean, it's a very different environment that people are going to be walking into in this day and age. There were no protections, for many, many years. So it's nice. It's encouraging to know that people's health is being looked after. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta power through it, I suppose.
Yeah, and old mixers can't hear.
Yeah,
it's just kind of part of the industry, but they've been around the block enough. They can trust their meters. They know their ears have adapted to, they know that if it sounds right to them, it's going to sound right to everybody. So there's some compensation there. But I mean, like when I say, we mix at 85 dB, that's on average.
Yeah.
There are moments in the movie that are going to play much louder than that.
Yeah.
And, the way we work is we might loop a scene 20 times in a row as we're adding little touches of automation. So if it's like a big action scene, that exposure might actually be a lot higher for little bursts of time. So it is, just part of the business, but, you try to mitigate it as much as you can.
Of course. So as far as, let's get back to the qualifications for this internship. Obviously, when you say strong Pro Tools skills, what does that actually mean to you? Like, what differentiates someone who's a competent Pro Tools user compared to someone who you would trust with a full post-production session?
I would say in terms of what we're looking for, it's roughly equivalent to like the 100 level certification.
Okay.
We basically don't want to be teaching Pro Tools in the internship. We want to be teaching post-production workflow.
Correct, yeah.
But we get all different levels of Pro Tools abilities. Like, for example, the internship is open to film students, and they get no in-class Pro Tools instruction at all. Any film student that does this internship had to buy Pro Tools for themselves and learn it on their own free time. So they're not going to be as sharp as, I can only speak to recording arts here on campus, but they spend a ton of time in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And they tend to be, quicker, more efficient in it. But we see everything on that spectrum. So that 100 level certification, it's pretty basic. I'm not expecting you to be able to build like a Dolby Atmos surround sound mixing template.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to, set up like complicated like LFE sends and returns and stuff like that. I just need somebody who can not be lost in Pro Tools, and as we gradually introduce new concepts, hopefully they have enough of a foundation to build off of that they're not completely lost, and we can kind of build them up a little bit.
Would someone who is more of a Pro Tools ninja have a little bit of a leg up on somebody who might not be, but is competent? Someone who can jump in right away, start learning about workflow, but isn't necessarily the best Pro Tools user.
I mean, of course, like somebody who's just an absolute Pro Tools ninja is going to have a leg up because they're going to figure stuff out a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But there are other major hurdles of difficulty to this internship other than Pro Tools. So even the sharpest Pro Tools user is still going to run into that wall of, oh wait, here's a new software. So case in point would be Isotope RX. That's not something that we really teach in our degrees at a deep level. It's got a very surface level. So when we're cleaning up dialogue and we get to the Isotope RX, even the sharpest Pro Tools users, it's a totally different app. So they're going to kind of hit that wall there. Or our sound effects library. We have an enormous sound effects library. We use an application for that called SoundMiner. And it's a very deep, very complicated application that you have to learn how to use. And not only that, but how do you navigate 500,000 sound effects? Like when you're trying to find what you're looking for, like learning how to use the library is another major pain point. So, so even though there's a slight leg up to that Pro Tools Ninja, everybody kind of gets leveled out to the same because they will have never seen Isotope or SoundMiner or some of the other concepts that we're going to get into.
And for the students that are paying attention, he's dropping some hints here. If you're interested in going for this internship, getting some exposure to some of the software that he's been talking about, I think would be a huge benefit to you. So
yeah, and we're professional educators. I shouldn't be telling you this, but like YouTube can be a resource for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with your sources. I would go directly to the Isotope channel or to the SoundMiner channel and watch the stuff that they've put out. There's a lot of post-production content on YouTube that's just garbage.
Yeah.
There are a few trusted sources. If you are interested in some people that I think are trusted sources on YouTube that I would actually refer students to, shoot me an email. When I throw my email address up on the screen, and I'll give you a list of links of some of the best channels to start to pick this stuff up on your own a little bit.
I think YouTube has slowly become the Wikipedia of video instruction, hasn't it? There's a lot to like, but you have to be careful about the source for sure. So as far as being an intern goes, I actually have 3 questions, and reading them through, they're all basically touching on the exact same thing. What does it take to be a successful intern? What are some common mistakes that they make, and how important is, and why is the most important thing communication and collaboration, that sort of thing?
So the first question, one more time, was the first part of that, the first leg of it?
The first part to it was, as far as being an intern, what are some mistakes that you see interns make? How important is communication, and what makes a good intern?
Okay, yeah. So I think what makes a good intern is being receptive to constructive criticism, because there's going to be a lot of it.
Sure.
There's a certain way that movies are supposed to sound, and we know that way. And when we give constructive feedback, it's hopefully to kind of point you in the right direction. Some people are more receptive to that than others. Case in point, I'm going to pick on one intern who I won't name. They were from a very small town in Russia. Really, really smart kid, really great Pro Tools operator. But we had to cut the engine for a car. And what we saw on screen was a 1960s or 70s American muscle car, like a Mustang or something, some big, loud. And what he cut in was like I don't know, like a Tatra or like some Yugoslavian car from the, the Cold War era that just sounded like a little putt-putt golf cart motor. And, he just would not accept that sound was unacceptable for what we were seeing on the screen. So it was a combination of maybe life experience, he maybe never was exposed to an American muscle car, but also just the inability to accept constructive criticism. When we said that sound doesn't work for that car, that, in our eyes is kind of like, okay, back to the drawing board, but in some people's eyes, they're going to argue why that car works. So I think that's a really important thing is, and knowing that if we're going to give that criticism, we have your best interest in mind. We're not there to pick on you, but we are there to pick your project apart so that it improves for the better. And that kind of goes along with communication. Accepting that constructive feedback is, a communication skill. Another thing in terms of communication is like, if you don't know something, like ask it 100% of the time, because we know you came to school to learn. We don't expect you to know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything.
No.
If you don't know something, ask a question. That's a problem we have sometimes with time management with interns, is that they'll get stuck on something and then they get in their head like, oh, I'm supposed to know this, so I'm going to sit here and try to force it. And then next thing we know, 3 hours have gone by and I come in to check and they have made no progress. Whereas if they had just come in to the office and asked the question, they'd already be on to the next step. So that's why communication is so important, because, like I said, the time management here is very much on the intern. And if you get hung up on something, don't let that happen. Because if you're at a paid job and that same thing happens, your employer is not going to be thrilled that they just paid you to sit there and do nothing for a few hours. So make sure you communicate your needs, just like responding when we communicate our needs. So that's why the communication is so key.
Yeah, questions don't necessarily make you look weak. I think in a lot of cases, there's nothing more powerful than the right question asked at the right time to the right person. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're competent enough to where you're not just asking questions throughout your entire shift. But, and something you said there made me think, some of the more eccentric film directors must have been a nightmare student,
Oh, I bet.
Because, the instructor is telling them to do one thing, but they have a completely different vision. How much of that enters into it? Is there any room for creative interpretation when it comes to working in a dub stage?
Yeah, I think there is room for creative interpretation. Just the main thing you have to understand is that, especially for the re-recording mixer position, you are in a role where you're interacting directly, person to person, sitting next to the director of the film. And at the end of the day, it's their film. Even if I'm the sound professional and I know for a fact, an indisputable fact, that this sounds better than that, if they say they want that, I give them that. Now, I might state my opinion. I might say, I think we should go with this because of this reason, but ultimately it's on them whether they want to reject that advice or not. And oftentimes they do, because they have the vision in their head of what they want it to be. But that said, there is still plenty of room for creativity. One thing I will do is I will give the director options. If I'm going to do something that I'm going out on a limb creatively, I'll cut an alternative on the tracks underneath and mute it. And that way, when we play it back for the first time, if they're like, yeah, I appreciate what you did there, but I don't like it at all. It's too much. You took too much of a chance. Then I highlight that, Command M, highlight the other set of clips, Command M. Okay, how about this as a B option? And they're like, wait, how did you do that? Like it only took you 5 seconds to like put something new in. Like, no, I pre-assembled something, because I knew this one was a little bit of a risk. So here's, and then they're like, oh, you know what? I like that, but let's bring back this element from option A and this element. And then you end up having a blend, and that's how you compromise and come to something. So yeah, even with the toughest directors, there's still plenty of room for creativity. It's just you have to know when to pick your battle on that, and when to just keep your mouth shut and walk away.
For you personally, what is something that you wish somebody had told you at the start of your career, or at least as a student, that you had to learn the hard way, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I get it's more of a logistical thing than anything with Pro Tools or anything with audio. I wish somebody had told me that I had to move to Hollywood. Because by the time I came to that conclusion on my own, I had become married and bought a house and got a dog and did all the stuff that makes it very difficult to just up and pull up and go to LA. I think, it's kind of unfortunate to have to say, but This particular industry is still very centered in Los Angeles. Not to say you can't work in this industry elsewhere, but if you want to work on blockbuster Hollywood movies, there's only one path to that. And that, not quite getting that drilled into my head until 10 years after I graduated, has made it to where, and I like the way things have turned out, but, I've only worked on low budget independent films.
Right.
And kind of made my own business. So you never know how life is going to turn out. Like I probably never would have started my business if I was just an employee at a dub stage in Hollywood.
Sure.
But I would also have much, much bigger credits that much more people will have seen. So, but that's something that I wish that I had known a little sooner.
I think that's important. Also, like you said, it doesn't have to be Hollywood. It just depends on what you want to get into. You can work at, for television, video games, a whole litany of different places that you don't necessarily need Hollywood for. But if you want to go big blockbuster, films to work on, Hollywood's really it, right?
Yeah, and you just jogged an important thought in my head. Like, if you're somebody sitting here and you want to do game audio, still do this internship.
Yeah.
Because we actually don't have a game audio internship, but there's a lot of overlap.
Right.
When it comes to Foley recording, sound effects editing, even dialogue editing to an extent, and mixing. You could work in the game industry. You could be doing cutscenes that are kind of done in a more linear film style. Or you could be doing game trailers. We have a former intern who's like the biggest game trailer editor and mixer out there now. And he's super grateful he did the internship, because even though it's like still the game industry, there's so much overlap that you can take a lot from it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the great things about the audio production degree program is the overlap between the different, subjects that they learn about. So that's an incredibly important point. So we're running up to the end of our hour now. I would like to open up the questions to the chat if there are any. But I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And for those of you who are interested, we have a town hall every month, and we'll talk about a whole litany of different subjects for sure. This is thank you for putting this up. This is Jason's contact information. Strawley at fullsail.com. Definitely reach out to him if you have any interest in this internship, or if you have any interest in the dub stage, post-production, anything like that. I would definitely take advantage of this. So.
Yeah, and whether it's via the chat here live or via email later on, once again, there's no dumb questions. We love questions.
Yeah, they're important. So cool, thanks. I guess that's all the time we have for today. We hope you've enjoyed hearing about the dub stage internship, a little bit about post-production and what's offered there. Remember that we do have an audio production town hall every month. So be on the lookout for the next one on Full Sail 1. It's typically happening on the last Monday of each class month. So we'd like to thank the live event production students this month's audiovisual technologies class and their course director, John Cost, for handling all of the behind-the-scenes audio production town hall. So thanks. Great job, team. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you later. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.